everybody, and welcome back to my channel. It's Russell with Ink and Paper Blog, and today we're here to talk all things Booker 2022. And I have a very, very special guest, Bernie Lombardo from Instagram fame, here to discuss the book Booker with me. Welcome, Bernie. How you doing?
Great, Russell. Thanks for having me.
So Bernie and I are on opposite sides of the United States. So it's 9:30 in the morning for me, 1:30 in the afternoon for him. And we're here to talk about the Booker, and I'm really, really excited. But for anyone who doesn't know you, Bernie, which I can't even imagine, can you tell them a little bit about yourself?
Sure, yeah. So you can find me on Instagram at bernie.lombardi. Outside of Instagram, I have a PhD in queer African literature, queer transnational African literature, and I teach courses in African and African American studies and English at Rutgers University, Newark, where I'm currently doing a postdoc.
So I brought in the big guns for the Booker 2022 list, y'all. So here we go. I will link Bernie's Instagram down below. Please, as always, go follow him. And he has amazing reviews, amazing photographs, and you can just get amazing recommendations for reading there. So we are going to talk about Booker 2022 this year. Lots of surprises on this list. Bernie, what was your first sort of reaction to the Booker long list this year?
That they kept off most of the heavy hitters that everybody was anticipating. Yeah, no To Paradise, no Young Mungo, no Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois. Yeah, a lot of the big names were kept off, which I think personally is exciting. That worked for me in a list.
I thought it was an exciting list. I don't normally read the whole Booker because usually it's very difficult for us to get all those books over here. But this year I thought everything sounded so interesting. I was like, okay, this is the year I'm going to jump into this one. Yeah, and none of the big names, which was really exciting. And so many debut novels. And we'll talk about each of them as they come up. So today, Bernie and I are actually not going to be reviewing any of the books. We're just going to talk sort of our initial reactions on every book that's on the long list. I have all of them but 4. So for the 4 I don't have, we will put up a digital photo and sort of go from there. And we're just going to go in alphabetical order by author, sort of starting from the beginning and give our sort of thoughts on that one. And you ready to get started?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay. So the first book that comes on the list is Glory, which I have had on my shelf since it came out, by NoViolet. Do you know how to say her last name?
I think it's Bulawayo.
So I'm going to be relying on Bernie a lot because I know I'm a butcher of names. This is out in the US from Viking. So this is sort of like a take on Animal Farm. And it's in response to the 2017 coup of the Zimbabwe president. So it's sort of like that. All of the characters are animals. This one is the one I am currently reading. I'm about 1/3 of the way for it. It's a trip. Have you had any response? Heard anything about it or anything like that?
I feel like it's kind of polarizing. I feel like people either are struggling through it or really enjoying it. Supposedly it's very funny because it's a satire, so naturally it's funny. My husband Chris is actually currently reading it. He's more than halfway through and he's loving it. He's eating it up. But yeah, I read her previous novel, and I'm going blank on the name. But is it We Need New Names?
Yeah, I think it is.
Yes, it is. We Need New Names. I read it like a long time ago. And it was actually shortlisted for the Booker as well, but it was before I followed the Booker that I read it. I had read it for like my studies while I was in graduate school. And it's very different. It's very different from what this is. But I'm excited because it's a book that I don't think I would have prioritized. I had it because like naturally I liked it. I also just love the cover. I don't know.
Yeah,
like,
the cover is fantastic.
The cover's like super satisfying. But yeah, it's not one that I like was going to prioritize. So I was actually really hoping that it would make the list because then it would make me read it sooner.
Yeah, I will agree. It is one of those books that is, one, it's a very dense writing style. So you have to, it's not a book that you fly through. It is so funny, but also horrifying at the same time. Because you're laughing at sort of this coup and this military coup and these terrible things that are happening, and you're catching yourself because you're like, oh, that was really funny and also terrible at the same time. It definitely like was a book that I had on my shelf. Again, I wouldn't have prioritized it, but now that I'm reading it, I'm like, darn it, I should have read this a long time ago. So I'm really excited about Glory. And this one is out in the United States, so you can get your hands on it right now.
Yeah, I would also quickly just I suggest that people before they read it maybe do a quick like Wikipedia of Robert Mugabe, whose dictatorship that it's about, and so I think that would help frame like the historical context that she's doing a satire of.
Yeah, and you know what I'm finding interesting about it too is that it is also amazingly relevant to a lot of other things going on in the world right now. So it's like sometimes I'm like, oh, this is very specific to what she's talking about, and then the next section I'm like, oh, this could be anywhere in the world today. So yeah,
that's
it's
really
crazy. Cool. One of the books that I just knew in my heart of hearts that was going to be on the long list is Trust by Hernan Diaz. His first novel was shortlisted for the Pulitzer. In the Distance, I believe that's what it's called. And I saw him speak about trust here in San Francisco, and I was blown away by the man. He is just brilliant. So this book is really just a discussion of the accumulation of wealth in America and looking at it from specifically that point of view and how it affects the United States, how it affects people, how it affects relationships. I have finished this one. I know that you're halfway through it. So what are your thoughts on Hernan and this book so far?
I really like it. Yeah, I just got to, there's 4 parts. I just got to part 3. I started it this morning, and I'm really enjoying it. He's a writer that I've been meaning to read for ages. So many people love In the Distance. Like there's almost like a cultish following behind it. And I've wanted to read it, but just haven't gotten to it. So I'm happy that I'm finally reading it. And the writing's really impressive. And I find how he's playing with like how stories are told, and like, you know, either like first person accounts or how someone fictionalizes somebody else's life. And I just find that super, or how somebody then like studies someone's life. I think it's all super interesting.
Yeah, I totally agree. Each section is sort of like its own book in a way. The first section is a novel. The second section is an autobiography. The third section is a memoir. And then like the fourth section is a journal. And as each section goes along, the pieces of this much bigger puzzle start to fall into place. I don't know about you. The first section was the hardest. It's very Edith Wharton in nature. It took me a minute to get through. It reminded me a little bit of when I was reading Cloud Atlas. Like that first section of Cloud Atlas was really hard for me to get through. But once I got to the end, I realized the brilliance of the whole piece. So he definitely dissects America and money and wealth in so many very interesting ways. So, and if you can see him speak, he's amazing. So yeah, Trust by Hernan Diaz. This is out from Riverhead Books. He is one of, are there 7 or 8 Americans on this list?
I think 6 or 7.
6 or 7. It's a pretty heavy American list this year. But I knew this one would be on it. And so I'm super excited for him and for the book. So there are a couple of big names on the list, but I feel like the next book is by one of those authors that all readers and authors talk about, but may not be known to like the general public as much. And that's The Trees by Percival Everett. I'm sure you've read a number of his books before, right?
I read Erasure when I was taking a class in grad school, yeah.
And I always forget, Telephone, which was out last year. That was, what was that? It was shortlisted for some award.
It was a finalist for the Pulitzer, yeah.
Yes, and then this year we have The Trees, which is everyone I trust loves this book. So again, another satire. So very interesting that the Booker people were very into satire this year. But this is about a string of murders that occur in Money, Mississippi, which is the town that Emmett Till was from 65 years after his murder. Yeah, I've heard that this book is dark, funny, but also like searingly relevant.
Yeah, and I love something that I like about the Booker is that although it does focus on American writers a little too much sometimes, which is one of, I guess, would be one of my criticisms of this list, is that it's a little US centric. It does tend to pull out writers that may be like overlooked in the United States. So I think that like on a mainstream level, Percival Everett is overlooked. So it's exciting that the Booker, which is, you know, like the best literary prize there is, in my opinion, you know, is featuring him, because I think that that's going to do a lot for his career, which, you know, he's not at the early stages of his career.
Yes.
He's far into it.
Yeah. Well, and what I love about Percival Everett as a writer is he just, I don't know how to say it, like he sets a tone in his writing from like the onset. Like he's one of those writers that you know where you're at and why very quickly. And I've always been really impressed with just his style, which I think is really cool. And the Booker tends to like these sort of, I call them historical fiction, but in this way, this is sort of a modern tale with a historical fiction twist, but they like to see books that sort of have that focus. Yeah, so I'm really excited about it. That's one that I still have yet to read. It's coming up on my list, but really excited for him sort of getting this booyah at the end, not the end, like late in his career. So cool. Okay, well, I think we both have read the next book on the list, and that's Booth by Karen Joy Fowler, the fictionalized story of the life of John Wilkes Booth. I am a huge Karen Joy Fowler fan. I think I've read everything she's written but one book. I've seen her in person. She has also been shortlisted for the Booker Prize before, and I can never remember the name. We are all completely beside ourselves, which is why I can't remember that title. But this is, again, the Booker likes their historical fiction in a lot of ways. And what's interesting is, you know, George Saunders won for his book regarding Lincoln, and now we have sort of the other side of that story in Booth. And we're not reviewing the books right now, but what did you think about this book showing up on the list? Were you surprised?
So I've never read Fowler before, but I had known that she was shortlisted for the Booker. And I feel like before it made the long list, it got a lot of criticism. So I didn't include it in my predictions because of that, because I feel like a lot of people didn't really like it, and were then like surprised that it was listed. But I listened to it on audio, and I don't know if that impacted my experience because it is really long, but I feel like that helped me move through it at an ideal pace. And I really enjoyed it. Like, do I think that it's going to be shortlisted? Not necessarily, but I did really enjoy what it was doing. I like how it told the story, like, about Booth. You go into it expecting it's going to be about John Wilkes Booth, but it's really not. It's about his family, and what it means to be related to the person who killed Abraham Lincoln. So
absolutely, it is clearly a passion project for her too, because she clearly did a ton of research. I think that's my biggest thing about it is there's a lot of the research in the book, which may get in the way a little bit of her narrative, but overall the dynamic of the Booth family is fascinating, and what she does too. Yes, she does a really good job. I think she's a brilliant writer, and she is so vastly different from the Jane Austen book club to this. Could not be any different. So I'm excited for her because I really love her, and she's local. She lives down the way in Santa Cruz from me, so always support our local authors. So I'm excited to see her there. So the next book on the list is one that I don't have a copy of, so we'll put a picture somewhere on the screen, and that's Treacle Walker, is that how you say that first name? Yep. By Alan Garner. And I believe he's the oldest person to ever be nominated for the Booker. If he wins, he'll be 88, and that will be the oldest person to win the Booker. I think currently the oldest winner is Margaret Atwood. I think I read that somewhere.
I think so, yeah.
Now, I have never heard of him because I believe this is his first adult novel. He's actually known for being a YA fantasy novelist, which I think is fascinating. But this is the story of a young boy who lives a very solitary life, and I believe he has some sort of, is it a lazy eye, maybe. I can't quite remember. But he has some sort of physical thing that he deals with, and a healer, like a spiritual shaman guy, shows up, and it's about their relationship and their friendship. It's hard to find a lot about this book because it is not, as far as I can tell, coming out in the US anytime soon. So have you heard anything about it? Has anyone you known read it or anything?
No, I haven't. I just, on the Booker website, they have where you could read like short excerpts of each of the books. So I just did that before this conversation, just to get a sense of the writing. And I guess the thing that stuck out to me is the coziness of it. I feel like that's a theme that carries through a bunch of these books, is there's like a coziness to almost like a UK winter coziness that like us and people in the UK might have a different impression of that, but like I relate to, like, you know, like the countryside or like the little old village. And so yeah, I got that vibe from reading the small excerpt.
And I always think books like that do very well at the Booker as well. You know, they like sort of that quintessential British novel or United Kingdom novel. They like that feel of it. So I'm excited about it. I love books that deal with like these simple relationships and the importance. So that one is on its way to me, and hopefully it will arrive any day now. So I'm super excited about that. The next book is the only book that isn't out yet, but I think it comes out next week. So people should be able to get their hands on it soon. And that's The Seven Moons of Maali, Almeida by Shehan. How do I say this last name?
And I don't have.
Yeah, I'm not sure either, Shehan. I apologize. I will put your last name on the board. But he is a Sri Lankan author, and this is not his first novel. And this book takes place, it's the story of a photographer who, from what I read online, passes away very early, and his spirit is trying to lead two lovers in his life, a man and a woman, to a group of photographs that will sort of blow up what's going on in Sri Lanka. I believe it's around the Sri Lankan Civil War, I believe. And I think that's fantastic. I have not read a lot of literature out of Sri Lanka. I think, though, he's the second author in a row, right?
Yep, we got a passage north from last year.
Yeah, so I don't know much about this book at all. The cover is absolutely gorgeous, and we will put a picture of the cover up here. But have you read anything by him before? Heard of him before the Booker came out?
No, I haven't, but this is one of the ones I'm most excited for, just based on the synopsis. In ways, it kind of reminds me of Elif Shafak's 10 Minutes, etc., in the way that it's about somebody who has already died, and they're It will be really interesting, and I believe it has like queer elements in it, and it's very much about the politics of Sri Lanka at the same time, and identity and all of that kind of stuff. So I'm really excited about that one. And again, the cover is like a piece of artwork. It's so beautiful. The shortest book ever nominated for the Booker is Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan. And I believe this was funny. Someone said, I was watching a video and they were like, everybody's going to read this one because it's 116 pages long and you can get through it really, really fast. So tell us a little bit about this one. You've read this one, right? No, not yet.
No. Oh, okay. So this is set in the 1980s in Ireland, in a small Irish town. It focuses on the life of a gentleman who delivers like coal and wood. And one day he arrives at a nunnery where there's these young girls, and he thinks something's going on, and sort of the implications of all of that. It is focused on a historical event, which my brain is completely blocking out right now, but it is short and sweet. To be honest with you, I couldn't believe it was over. Like, I had read it and I was like, oh, this is already done. So, but short is 116 pages. Do you remember when Ian McEwan was nominated for On Chelsea Beach, and there was like this argument if that was even a novel?
I don't, but I've actually never read Ian McEwan, so.
Oh, well, On Chelsea Beach is fantastic. But I remember I was just reading, I sometimes will go on the Booker website and read like about the winners, and there was this huge debate on whether or not he should even be on the short list. And this book is so short. But everyone I know that has read this book, and a lot of people of my Irish viewers love it. They think it is fantastic. She has a very cozy way of writing, as you put it.
I read the first couple pages and it was very cozy. It also takes place around Christmas, which is a standout thing for people.
Yeah, absolutely. And she's one of those authors, though, that I have never read her before, but there are a lot of people that are stans for Claire Keegan. So excited for her to get on this list, get her name maybe a little bit more widely known outside of Ireland. So that's really exciting. So, okay, the next book is actually another one that is on its way to me, which is Case Study by Graeme, Macrae, Burnet. Do you have this one?
Yes.
Okay. So he is also, this is his second long list. His last book, The Bloody Project, I believe it was called. This one sounds fascinating to me. So the story of a woman who believes that her sister's psychiatrist was involved in her death. So she creates an identity and starts going to the therapist herself. I don't need much more than that because that sounds crazy. So did you read The Bloody Project or have you read him before?
No, but that's another one that seems really interesting and I think plays with form. And this plays with form as well. I think part of it is the notes that the main character is taking, in these sessions. And yeah, there's like boxed in pages against. So there's, I think that's cool. And the booker always likes to have books that do interesting things. And there are other ones on this list that does that.
I was just about to say that there are a couple of themes to this list. There are a couple of books that do some weird things with form and structure, which this is one of them. And then it always seems to have like a book that it's almost like a thriller in nature on the long list, something that just seems like it's going to be really one of those page turners that you can read and then is much more deep than you initially think it's going to be. But this one I'm really excited about. It seems like a fantastically interesting idea. So mine is on its way. I got the shipping notification yesterday, so I know that it's coming over from the UK. So the next book we both have read actually, and I believe we both really wanted to see it on the list, and that's The Colony by Audrey Magee. She has also been on the Booker shortlist before. But this is the first book that I've read by her.
Same.
Yeah. What's this one about? Can you tell us a little bit?
I think she was on the Women's Prize. I think this is her first appearance on the Booker. I don't know. I'm reading.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I'm sorry. Getting my prizes mixed up.
It's so easy with all the prizes. But it's another UK prize. So, it makes sense that we would get them mixed up. But so this is a book that is a Bookstagram darling. People on Bookstagram love this book. I think people would have been pretty upset if it didn't make the long list. And it was one of many books that are set in Northern Ireland around the Troubles that were up for the prize, and people were trying to decide which one it would be. I think most people wanted it to be this one. It's another one that is playing with form in an interesting way. It's set on an island off of Northern Ireland, and a British man and a French man each come to the island with their own set of goals and assumptions, and we kind of see how their presence plays out and impacts the different islanders and how the islanders respond to that. But the writing's really interesting because I think the British man's an artist, and you could tell that when she's writing, about him, it's almost like the style that she uses feels like brushstrokes. It's more poetic. And then the French man's an academic. He's an anthropologist. And so when she's writing about his stuff, it's much more dense and conventional writing, which I think is really interesting.
I totally agree. I was quite impressed with her ability to juggle those two very different points of view. And the artist, that was my favorite part because it was just like this, almost these poetic blurbs at times, but they would paint, no pun intended, but paint this picture, and I'd be like, oh, I totally get this moment or this guy. And that it's such a microcosm of the idea of like this conflict, not only in Ireland, but, Irish culture disappearing and stuff. So you're in this little place, but the exponential impact of all of it is so much bigger, is so well done in this book.
Absolutely.
Cool. Okay, the next book you were talking about form is Maps of Our Spectacular Bodies by Maddie Mortimer. This is another debut that is on the list, and it won a prize. She just won a prize too. Yeah, I mean, she was born in 1996. She was born after I graduated high school, so she's a baby in my world. But this book is about a family, a mother, a husband, and a daughter dealing with a cancer diagnosis. And part of the narrative is told from the point of view of the mother's cancer. It's the mother cancer, right? Yep. And that, I think, if you look at this book definitely plays with form. I'll just hold this up. This has got some stuff going on. I was sent this book, but I hadn't heard anything about it. So I'm really excited that it showed up on this list because it's going to make me read it. And the cover is quite beautiful.
Yep. Yeah. I've had basically the same experience, though I did see people in Australia and the UK, a bunch of bookstagrammers that I know were reading it a few months ago, and it really intrigued me. And I was curious if it would make the Booker long list just because of what it does. So I was happy to see it because now I'm excited to read it. Yeah,
you know, a young author doing something new, the Booker very much likes to champion those people. So I'm really excited about that one, though point of view of cancer can't be that uplifting, I'm sure. But yeah, I'm really excited about it. So, and I know very little about her or her book, so that's exciting. So the youngest author ever to be nominated for the Booker Prize is Leila Mottley for Nightcrawling. And it's funny because at first I was like, oh, this 19-year-old, you know, her book is coming out. She wrote it when she was 17. And then, you know, it gets picked up by Oprah. So, you know, there's no need. She's got her publicity, but we both probably had the same reaction to this, thinking about a 19-year-old writing a book. Set in Oakland. It's actually set around an event that I actually remember occurring. I live probably 45 minutes from Oakland. A real life event where it was discovered that a group of police officers were taking advantage of young girls and basically prostituting them across their organization. Leila takes it and flips it from the point of view of one of the young girls and sort of her struggle to keep her family together, to keep those she loves surviving. Without saying anything, because we're not reviewing, blew my mind. There's an economy of language to this that is so sophisticated that is just, and she was the Oakland Poet Laureate at 19 years old. And you can totally tell she knows how to take a few words and punch you in the face.
Yep. She's extremely talented. I'm so impressed. I was so skeptical going into this, just like you said, like having such a young writer writing a novel, you know, you think that, do they have enough experience, you know, life experience to really, you know, shape a nuanced narrative? But she does. It's really brilliant. And the youthfulness that she brings to it, I think adds something that is special. It's a smart book.
Yeah, and she paints, we often see books where the city is, or the location is so important to the overall story being told, and the way she paints the picture of Oakland is masterful, because it's so important really to the story of the young Kiara, I believe is her name. And yeah, it's really, really quite amazing. So yeah, very, very, very good. Congratulations to her. She's 20 and look at what her life has turned into. Yeah. So good for her. Absolutely. So the next book is another one that I don't have quite yet. But when I read, you have it, After Sappho by Selby Lynn Schwartz. This was the one I had never heard of, but once I read about it, I was like, this book sounds fantastic. So like a fictional retelling of the lives of many different feminist women through history. I know very little about it. She's also American, I believe, correct?
She's local to you. I believe she's a professor at Berkeley.
Oh, I'm gonna now someone to find and see if I can find her. Congratulations. But this book sounds fantastic. I've heard also it plays with form a little bit differently. Have you had a chance to flip through it?
I have, yeah. It's vignettes.
Okay.
And it's, yeah, and I think that she's like weaving together the stories of these historical women around this idea of challenging what it means, or like challenges what it means and what we think of womanhood. So I think that scene, based on the description, that's the impression I got. But the writing is poetic, and it's divided into small vignettes. Yeah,
I'm really excited about that one. I know she goes through many women in history. If you read the blurb, it starts off, I read the blurb, was it on Goodreads, that sort of starts with the first story, and it kind of punches you a little bit in the face. And I was like, oh, what is this going to be like? But I'm really interested to see what she's going to do. Is this?
Yeah, and the blurb is actually by Lucy Ellman, who's the writer of Ducks Newburyport. So that's an exciting endorsement for fans of Ducks Newburyport. Like,
yeah. Yeah. Well, and I mean, similar, both of those authors very much are playing with style and structure, it seems. So that's super exciting. And probably, I would argue, the most famous author left on this list. She's the last author on this list, and probably the most famous, and that is O. William by Elizabeth Strout. Are you an Elizabeth Strout stan?
Yes, she's one of my all-time favorite authors. I'm obsessed with Elizabeth Strout.
So I've read 4 of her books. I read both of the Olive books. I read My Name is Lucy Barton. I did not read the one in between, and now I've read O. William. I said to my friend, I said, I had forgotten how she just writes in such a way that you feel like you are in the most capable hands to ever put pen to paper. She's amazing. So this is the story of Lucy Barton, the 3rd book in a series, and this is really her reflection on her marriage to William, who was her first husband, I believe, and she was his second wife. But really, it's almost like a memoir of their relationship / some things that they go through. I mean, goodness, it is so good.
Yeah, no, it really is. And I think the thing that I would emphasize is that just, my own reaction to her long listing is that she's become, because she's one of my favorite writers, she's become so comforting for me. And for some reason, because I'm so comforted by her writing, I don't think of it as a book. I don't think of her books as Booker books, because they're not typically comforting. But then after this got longlisted, I really thought about it hard. And it's such a smart book. It's not only does it deserve to be on the long list, I think it should be shortlisted too. It's such a strong book. She really just has a way at getting at human experience and what it means to be alive, and to think about things that most humans think about without really putting it in your face. It's just subtle and underneath the writing.
Yeah, she has such a nuanced way of dealing with flawed characters for me, because, Lucy Barton is not at all the times likable, or she makes some decision, and sometimes she's frustrating, but in the same time, you are there and bought in with her, which I think just shows her talent and her sophistication. So I need to go back and read the book in the middle. Clearly, I've read the 1st and the 3rd. Yeah. But I was so excited because, it wasn't even on my radar that she could be on the Booker long list. So, I'm so happy. She's one of those writers that when a book comes out by her, we all flock to read it.
Yep. Yeah, and we get Lucy by the Sea soon. Her
it's right around the corner.
Yeah.
Well, it does seem weird because this book seemed to have come out a while ago here in the US, so maybe released a little bit later in the UK. Hence it's on the Booker now. So yeah, the 4th book is coming out in that series. So I am really excited about this Booker list.
Me too.
Was there your initial thought when you saw these 13 books? Did you have one that you thought, oh, this is the one I think is the book to beat?
Yeah, I do have a low-key feeling that this is going to be the winner.
Okay, interesting. I think so. Who won last year? Damon Galgut, right? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Which I love. I read The Promise because of you, and absolutely love that book. But I don't know if they will give it to this person, but my gut was Trust was my first gut reaction. I feel like it's a Booker book, you know, sort of all around. But I would be totally. Glory has its definite.
Trust would be my second. Trust was like my second in the gut. I have a gut feeling about a short list. I'll show you.
Okay. Stacks of books. We've all had to put stacks of books together. We know how it is without dropping them.
These plus the 7 Moons, I could see being a short list.
That would be a phenomenally tough short list.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it covers different spots, whether it be in style and form or where they take place. I think that would be an exciting short list. I mean, I haven't read most of them, so but that was like we were talking about gut reactions, and that was my
absolutely gut reactions. And we'll talk more about this. Bernie has agreed to be on my channel again. I believe the short list comes out on September 3rd. Does that seem right? I read that.
I know it's the beginning. It's the beginning of September, yeah.
So we will be getting together in another couple of weeks to try to come up with that. We are both frantically reading, trying to get through the whole list. And we will make our predictions and go from there. But Bernie, thank you so much for being on my channel. Hopefully,
yeah, thanks for having me, Russell.
And we will see you again. Give everyone your Instagram handle one more time, and I'll link it down below.
Sure, it's just at Bernie.Lombardi.
And I will have that down below. Follow Bernie on Instagram, and I will see you all later. Happy reading, everyone. Bye.